One of the unique things about Pokemon is that the same Pokemon gets printed over and over with different effects and new sets, and Gardevoir has been pretty popular, getting 23 different cards since it was first released in EX Ruby and Sapphire, with an outstanding 70% of them being competitively viable. In this list, we're going to take a look at some of the absolute best of these powerful cards. And at number 10, we have Gardevoir-EX from EX Dragon Frontiers. Gardevoir-EX is one of the most interesting cards in the game's history, because it is one of the very few cards ever printed that places a type of marker that is not a poison or burn marker. Fittingly, it is also the best of those cards, as the Imprison marker is one of the strongest markers in the game. With its Pokepower Imprison, Gardevoir-EX can place an Imprison marker on one of your opponent's Pokemon, which makes it so that the Pokemon with the Imprison marker on it is unable to use Pokepowers or Pokebodies, which is enough to completely cripple certain strategies on its own. One other trait of Imprison markers that's not specifically detailed in the card's text is that Imprison markers are not removed from a Pokemon when it goes to the bench, like a Poison or Burn marker would be, meaning that the effect is essentially permanent unless the opponent evolves the Pokemon or happens to be playing Tropius in their deck. In addition to the incredibly powerful Imprison, Gardevoir-EX also has a pretty strong attack. Flame Ball, which for 1 fire energy and 2 colorless, does a solid 80 damage and moves an energy from itself to one of your bench Pokemon, conserving the energy for later use. In this RSPK format, a format that only exists in Japan, many players use Gardevoir-EX alongside Gardevoir from EX Delta Species in order to make sure the energy to attack with Flame Ball were always on Gardevoir-EX if you were unable to find a new energy to attach. This strategy was extremely powerful, being considered one of the best of the format until very recent developments by dedicated fans have largely pushed the deck out of the format's competitive metagame, landing Gardevoir-EX at only the 10th place on this list. And at number 9, we have Gardevoir-EX from Primal Clash. At the time of its release, many players were skeptical as to whether or not Gardevoir-EX would be able to hold its own in the format, as it seemed a bit too slow for the power level of the format at the time, but as time passed, the power of its Brilliant Arrow proved to be quite incredible. For 1 fairy and 2 colorless energy, Brilliant Arrow does 30 times the number of fairy energy that you have attached to all your Pokemon in play. By modern standards, a multiplier like this is quite unimpressive, but at the time of its release, most of the top Pokemon in the modified format only had 180 HP, meaning that just 6 energy in play was enough to take massive one-hit knockouts. This was largely facilitated by using Xerneas from XY's Geomancy to put fairy energy onto the board, which doubled as a way to power up attackers while also flooding the board with energy. At its peak, players typically put it alongside Giratina-EX from Ancient Origins, and Salamence-EX to make use of the double dragon energy to boost the damage output of Brilliant Arrow by 60 for a single attachment rather than just 30. This strategy proved to be quite strong, and while it never won any major tournaments in the Master Division, it proved to be quite successful in younger age divisions, winning the Oceania International Championship in 2017 in the Seniors Division. And at number 8 on this list, we have Gardevoir and Sylveon-GX, or more commonly known as Guardian, from Unbroken Bonds. Boasting 3 excellent yet simple attacks, Guardian proved throughout its 2 years of legality that sometimes being straightforward is enough in the Pokemon TCG. Almost every Guardian build, regardless of the format, took on this same strategy. Ideally, you would go first, attach an energy, and end your turn. On the following turn, you would attach another energy and use Fairy Song to put 2 energy onto a second Guardian. On the following turn, another energy would be attached from the hand to an active Guardian, and you would use Kaleidostorm to move all energy to an undamaged Guardian to prepare for a magical Miracle GX to shuffle your opponent's entire hand into the deck. And then finally, one more Kaleidostorm on the following turn would restabilize your energy spread for the rest of the game. The card's flowchart-like game plan was enough for the card to put up consistent results for its full legality, but it often fell victim to being just short of a big finish, finishing just outside the top 8 at both 9th and 10th at the 2019 World Championship. Fortunately, the card was able to win a regional championship later that year to really solidify itself as one of the best cards of its time. But one has to wonder how much higher it could have been on this list if things had just gone a little bit differently. And at number 7 on this list, we have a rather new card to the Pokemon TCG, Radiant Gardevoir from Lost Origin. In the just under 4 months since the card's release, it has already proven its place as one of the most powerful Radiant Pokemon that has been printed. With mediocre attack that, for 1 psychic energy and 2 colorless, does 70 damage plus 20 more damage for each energy on the defending Pokemon, Radiant Gardevoir is carried pretty much entirely by its ability, Loving Veil, which makes your Pokemon in play take 20 less damage from attacks of your opponent's Pokemon V. With such a simple ability, most people would tend to immediately wonder, how is this card so good? Well, it comes largely from the fact that, at the current point in the Pokemon TCG metagame, almost every deck is reliant on doing exact amounts of damage needed for knockouts, rather than overkills being common. As a result, Radiant Gardevoir is able to provide a way to disrupt this focus on doing exactly enough damage by instead making attacks fall just short of the knockout, swinging the advantage in the player with Radiant Gardevoir's favor. In the short time since its release, Radiant Gardevoir has already been a part of 2 regional championship winning strategies, as well as landing in the top 8 of an international championship, making it easily one of the best Gardevoir cards ever printed. And at number 6, we have Gardevoir-EX from EX Sandstorm. This card is extremely simple, with feedback, which costs 1 psychic and 1 colorless energy, dealing damage equal to the number of cards in your opponent's hand, and Sandstorm, which requires 1 psychic and 3 colorless, dealing damage equal to the number of energy in play. By most standards, both of these attacks seem very okay at best, but it must be understood this card came out in the first season of competitive play under the TPCI umbrella. As such, many of the cards were very underpowered. At the time, the 2004 format, one of the most common traits of decks was building up massive hand sizes thanks to Steven's advice, and Copycat being the 2 best supported cards to draw cards with, in addition to Delcatty from EX Ruby and Sapphire drawing even more cards. As such, feedback actually typically was able to do upwards of 100 damage, meaning that it typically was able to take one-hit knockouts against Pokemon in the format, which had relatively low HP values. Additionally, Sandstorm ended up being a very strong attack, thanks to both Boost Energy and Gardevoir from EX Ruby and Sapphire, allowing you to flood your board with energy to set up for massive knockouts if the opponent's hand was not big enough. As a result of the combination of these 2 factors, Gardevoir-EX was pretty easily able to take control of a game by reducing the number of cards your opponent could hold without getting knocked out, as well as reducing the number of energy that they could reasonably have in play. This deck proved to be so powerful that it won the 2004 US National Championship in the Master Division, as well as getting second in 2004 World Championship in the Seniors Division, but it fell off pretty aggressively following the 2004 World Championship, leading to it only holding the 6th spot on this list. And at number 5, we have Gardevoir-EX from Steam Siege. In the XY block, Gardevoir was one of the very few Pokemon to get more than 1 Mega Evolution, but it was the only one that had both of its Mega Evolutions see competitive success. As a dual-type Pokemon, Gardevoir-EX is one of the most potent attackers in the format for a long period of time after its release, largely because it benefited from being able to hit Dragon-type, Psychic-type, and Fighting-type Pokemon for weakness, while also having resistance to Dark-type Pokemon, which was one of the most popular types when Gardevoir-EX was released. With this excellent type coverage, all any card would need was any sort of decent attack and it would instantly become very good. And boy did Gardevoir-EX deliver on this front. Despair Ray does 110 damage for 1 Fairy and 1 colorless energy, which is solid on its own, but it also allows you to discard as many of your bench Pokemon as you'd like to do 10 more damage for each one that you discard. This attack would prove to be incredible as it allowed Gardevoir-EX decks to take advantage of all the format's best support Pokemon, such as Shaymin-EX, and then discard them again before they could become liabilities. Additionally, thanks to Skyfield, Gardevoir-EX decks could have up to 8 bench Pokemon, meaning they could hit a ceiling of 190 damage, which would be enough to take a one-hit knockout on many of the format's best attackers. This Gardevoir proved to be exceptional both by itself and as attack and decks built around the other Gardevoir-EX to cover the deck's somewhat difficult Mew-EX matchup. With top level finishes both by itself and with a partner, it should be quite clear why this card is 5th on this list. And at number 4, we have Gardevoir from EX Ruby and Sapphire. As the first Gardevoir card ever released, it's only fitting that it'd be one of the best. Not just that, but it also set a very early precedent for what future Gardevoir cards would do. With its size, shadow, Pokepower, Gardevoir was able to provide excellent energy acceleration for the deck at the cost of placing just damage counters of the Pokemon getting the energy. In addition, the card had a reasonable attack which, for just 1 psychic energy, did 10 times the number of energy attached to both active Pokemon, which often was not a lot, but in the early game could take a cheap knockout. Throughout the entire EX era, a term used to describe the format spanning from 2004 to 2007, Gardevoir, be it the printing in EX Ruby and Sapphire or the later reprint in EX Power Keepers, was a powerful form of energy acceleration for all of the many successful Gardevoir strategies, in addition to several other strategies. As a result of its focus in many top-level strategies, it's easily earning itself a higher spot on this list. And at number 3, we have Gardevoir-X from Secret Wonders. Gardevoir-X is one of the most powerful forces in the format for its entire legality, and this was for a multitude of reasons. Between a powerful Gardevoir to use attacks from to powerful Gallade to partner with, Gardevoir strategies were one of the most powerful decks in the game from 2008 to 2010, and are even widely considered to be one of the best decks in the history of the game. Remarkably, Gardevoir-X's place in these decks largely came from having a strong Pokepower while also giving Gardevoir a little extra HP. Gardevoir-X teleportation allowed you to switch your active Pokemon once per turn without having to use up your once per turn retreat, allowing for a nearly unprecedented level of flexibility to pivot between a multitude of attackers. In addition, its Bring Down attack, while it was used quite sparingly, had some niche applications in the early stages of the game to pick off frail Pokemon on your opponent's side of the board, and to clean up knockouts that you may not have gotten earlier, for just the cost of 2 psychic energy. The resume of the Diamond and Pearl era Gardevoir decks was unlike that of any other decks in the game's history. And at number 2, we have Gardevoir-GX from Burning Shadows. As cards from the set were announced in mid-2017, many players were quite underwhelmed by Burning Shadows. That is, until Gardevoir-GX was announced. At that point, people's opinions of the set dramatically changed, focusing on the absurdity of the card. With an unbelievably strong ability and 2 incredible attacks, Gardevoir-GX was quickly set to be not just one of the best cards in the set, but one of the best cards printed in the entire Sun and Moon block. Its ability Secret Spring is quite straightforward, allowing you to attach an extra fair energy each turn to one of your Pokemon in play. While this is not that absurd on its own, it becomes much more impressive when one considers that this can be used multiple times with multiple Gardevoir-GXs in play. Fittingly, it synergized perfectly with its attack Infinite Force, which does 30 times the number of energy attached to both active Pokemon. Between manual attachments, multiple Secret Springs, and your opponent's energy, it was very, very easy for Gardevoir-GX to score massive one-hit knockouts against pretty much anything in the format. As if that was not enough, its GX attack, Twilight-GX, allowed you to shuffle any 10 cards from your discard pile into your deck, proving to be an excellent way to recover some of the deck's most powerful resources, or to shuffle back a bunch of item cards against Gardevoir, which was one of the best decks in the game prior to the release of Gardevoir-GX. This card was so powerful that it was able to win the 2017 World Championship, which is an impressive feat on its own. But it is even more impressive when you consider that it's the card's very first tournament that was legal in the United States. Following the big win, Gardevoir-GX would continue to dominate for about 6 more months, earning an international championship win along the way. And then it later re-emerged in late 2018 to win a regional championship. With success at all levels of Pokemon TCG competition, it is quite difficult to imagine a Gardevoir card that is better than Gardevoir-GX. But the next card on this list makes even Gardevoir-GX look weak in comparison. And finally, at number 1, we have Gardevoir from Secret Wonders. It is really hard to put in perspective just how absurd this card was when it was legal, so it's best to just allow the card to speak for itself. Its Pokepower Telepass allows you to copy any supporter card from your opponent's discard pile and use it as your own, but it does not count as your one supporter for the turn. This means that you could copy a consistency supporter in your opponent's discard pile and then use a disruption supporter to try to cripple their hand afterwards. This particular strategy perfectly synergized with Gardevoir's attack, Psychic Lock, which for 1 Psychic and 2 colorless energy does 60 damage and locks your opponent out of using Pokepowers during their next turn. While Psychic Lock may look expensive on paper, this card's irritating attack cost was best filled by double Rainbow Energy, Scramble Energy, or double colorless energy, meaning that you could very realistically use the attack to lock your opponent down for the entire game, starting on the second turn. During its first season of legality, Gardevoir saw unprecedented levels of dominance, taking down many major events, including regional championships, before ultimately winning the US National Championship. When it came to the World Championship, many players wondered if the deck would maintain the same dominance it had up until that point, and to nobody's surprise, the deck also won the 2008 World Championship. With an incredible rookie season, the deck had high expectations set for itself in the 2009 season, which was ultimately not too kind to it, but it did see some sporadic success. Then again in 2010, the deck would end up making a surprise reappearance in the finals of the 2010 World Championship, narrowly falling short of winning a second title. As a result of this incredible dominance across multiple years of competitive play, it should be quite clear that Gardevoir from Secret Wonders is not just the best Gardevoir card, but is even perhaps one of the best Pokemon cards ever printed. Alright, and that's the list. If you think I missed any of the cards or have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below.